Good morning, Ryan. How are you today?
I'm good. I've got 2 days. I've got a 2 day streak of yoga. This is my third day that I haven't done yoga before I cracked open the computer. And I'm recognizing now that probably after this, I'll go and get my 3 days in a row. And just like most things in life, as an individual element, and it's an individual element on its own is not as powerful as two times. And then once it hits three times, and then sometimes all it takes is that little momentum to do the small things to make life better. So I'm good. I'll be better after I hit my third day in a row of some yoga.
Perfect. I love that intro. I think it speaks volumes of who you are and your authenticity, and you're willing to share with our audience sort of your personal journey in life, if you will. So, welcome to my show about startups. I'm very excited to have you here today. I multiple reasons, but I myself am on this personal professional journey into the startup world, and I'm a lawyer by training. I've been helping clients for 19 years resolve their litigation issues. Meaning somebody sues them, and we fight. We're just fighting to the death, and so I am kind of changing the direction that I'm going in and trying to be more proactive and helping the startup community to set up, structures and the foundation to help them be successful long term, so that when they do have these little flare-ups of lawsuits, then they have the solid footing. So I welcome having someone like you that can help them on this journey to be who they are, authentic, to maintain that person that they are at their core, and not change it because of litigation or lawsuit, or because of what they see someone else doing, or lots of things happen in life that cause you to kind of shift away from the core person of who you are. So I think the timing is perfect that we're getting together, and let's see what topics we can dig into today. With that, before I start to keep on talking, I just want to take a pause, because one of the things that I learned from watching your videos was the pause.
Yes, the power of the pause. In my, I think, fourth TEDx talk, that was the main topic. And I'm fascinated with the way that people communicate. And there was this, for people who haven't seen it, I'm going to assume people haven't seen it, but there was a global linguistics study that was done focusing on the gap between when you finish talking and when I start. They went around the world and they would watch conversations and literally with a stopwatch take times. And it was a big project. On the one extreme, those with the longest gaps were the Norwegians and the Swedes. On the other end, you had the Chinese, who are just so rapid fire, there's hardly any gap between that. But right in the middle was sort of the world average. And the thing that fascinated me was that the average time of that gap between when someone stops talking and somebody starts is actually less time than it takes for us to actually formulate a response. And so what happens is that people are listening, and then they've decided this is what I'm going to say in response to this, but the other person keeps talking. And so you sort of stop listening, and then you wait for them to stop talking, and then you jump in there and you just say what you wanted to say. But the person might think, well, that was a comment to what I said 3 sentences ago. This person obviously isn't listening. And I think that's sort of a telltale for what's happening right now, is people are doing less listening and more pouncing on the conversation. So I appreciate the pause. I think giving pause gives people a chance to speak. And listening to what you had said, I was going to say yoga would be great for you. And the other thing that came to mind is that there's no better trainer than someone who has already been in a bunch of fights. And so I think you're really well positioned to help people understand what is very potential down the line. Lawsuits from outside forces. Personally, I've had a lot of challenges with business partners, and that's created a lot of yoga-worthy stress-related sort of topics. And so in the startup game, sometimes we get excited and we all get bright and bushy-tailed about the idea and changing the world, but we need people like you to bring us to start smart And when you start smart, it's going to be easier to take the swings and the bricks that are thrown at your head along the way.
Thank you for that. I did not pay you to say that, but if I could have said that, I would have. But you're absolutely right. I mean, going back to what I said to you in the beginning, I struggled for a long time. I mean, I've been practicing law for 19 years, and I struggled because I didn't think that my clients would be open to the message of take a pause in your business and do some inventory of where you're at and figure out really where did you start this journey? Where did this start? What idea brought you to where you're at now? And are you still there? Have you gotten off track? And usually litigation is a sign that you've kind of gotten off track. And so tying it back to my personal life, I get off track at least twice a year where it's so bad that I have to extricate myself from my law firm and take a week away to really get reconnected, and I do yoga retreats or, all kinds of different retreats that really help me get reconnected to who I am, and remembering that while maybe my clients at this moment can't hear the message, I just got to stay on track and keep, spreading the truth, if you will, of my experiences with litigation and hoping that they hear it. So I appreciate you mentioning, that I'm well suited, because it's a bit of a validation for me that I'm in the right path. I'm taking the right steps.
Yeah. And the key word you said there was experience. And I love this topic when it comes to entrepreneurs, especially those who might not have the expertise that they would want at the moment. And if I asked you the question, what's more important, expertise or experience, what would your gut instinct tell you?
Experience.
All day, every day. And I think that when we recognize that, we're really pushed, to choose between the two. I think we tend to think that expertise is most important. But when we're pushed and we're actually asked, and you think about it, your experience is what helps to formulate your expertise. And so thought leadership can start, even if you're not an expert, by helping to share your experience. And as sharing your experience and your story, people will become, they will see you as someone who is an expert. And so if you're out there going, I'm an expert, people might look at you sideways. But if you're like, well, let me tell you about the 100 litigation fights that I've been in and what I've learned from it. And then you've got their ear and they might want to learn from it. Now, the tricky part about experience is that you get it just after you need it.
Right. Unfortunately.
So experience is something that you actually have to live through. And this is probably why some of your clients, you can tell them until you are blue in the face, but until they experience that, until they get served, until they deal with the financial burden or the stress around that, sometimes you have to experience that in order to be like, oh man, I do not want to go through that again. So your job is commendable by trying to sort of rattle them before they have that experience. And you can convince them by sharing yours and other people's experience, because that's the closest thing that they'll get to really understanding that.
Right. Gotcha. Yep. Amen to that. So I want to pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about some resources, because as I'm entering this world of startup, there are just, I can't even, count on my hand just the amount of knowledge that an entrepreneur needs just to keep themselves going. And so that actually was one of the reasons I started this startup chat, was because I wanted to introduce individuals like you who could provide resources for the startup community, to give them sort of a, hey, here, let me hold your hand through this piece. And so as you are experienced in this world, I wanted to find out from you if you have any, resources or anything that you could kind of point our listeners to as a resource for them as they start this startup journey.
Sure. So selfishly, I have a course that I've created for entrepreneurs who are in this very beginning stage where they know they want to explore. They want to maybe have a side hustle. Maybe they have a big idea, but they're not really sure if it's the right idea. I've created a course with 3 parts. One of how I come up with ideas, how I see validating ideas, and then how to communicate ideas. And really the third part, I think, is one of the most important and the least paid attention to. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't explain it in a compelling way, it no longer is the best idea in the world. And so sometimes we forget that just like an article, sometimes the headline is more important than the article, because if nobody clicks on the article, they're not going to read your article. And so the same thing, you can have the best idea with the greatest patents and the most amazing magical technology, but if you can't get people to be willing to look or listen or hear you out, then that can be a problem. So for those interested in that sort of a 101 beginner course, you can go to ryan.online/start. So you can also just go to ryan.online, and I have a free sources tab and the information's there. I will say that learning from others is a great way to look at resources. So look at entrepreneurs that you admire, right? Like Gary Vaynerchuk, like, Keith Ferrazzi, like some of these people who have made an impact, and they're 20 years into building their brand and being out there. A lot of times they will share their secrets in the form of a memoir, or they'll share their secrets in a book or in a series of books. And so as you're searching the internet, I would encourage you to also search for books, actual books that really people put thought into documenting the process. I have a book called Ditch the Act, and it's about my journey and how I found the best way to get ahead in business is to actually be human. And, when you take the variety of experiences from others, I would say, don't forget that books are a great resource. I think sometimes we get lost in the articles, we get lost in the clickbaity things online. And when it comes to resources, I will say that they're all there. You can literally find, there's never been a more information dense environment ever. But what people forget about is the importance of the order in which you do things. I'll say that again. Most people are doing the right things, but if you do the right things in the wrong order, you will run into problems. You will become disconnected from what you initially thought you were doing. You might run into litigation because you've gone off the rails. And for me, a lot of times that I can point back to core messaging. Now, core messaging can change, but sometimes we get so excited. We're like, okay, what's the problem we solve? What's our solution? What's our market? Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Let's go. Let's launch. And you're like, but wait a minute. Is that really the problem? Is that really the solution? And are those really your market? And so I would say that when it comes to resources, when you're searching the internet, find books and people that you respect that have a path that you can see. And then make sure that when you're looking at all this information, know that just doing things won't get you anywhere in particular, but doing things in the right order. And even from your standpoint, making sure that your entity is set up correctly, making sure that you have the right protections, making sure that you have that foundation. I just think it's so easy to like leapfrog over the first couple steps. And then that just creates challenges and problems when you start getting real traction.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that. I do see that in my practice. It's almost this excitement, like, let's go, let's launch, let's do this. Skipping over, building the foundation of your house. If you don't have that concrete layer, the second a wind comes, there goes your house, and you're kind of scrambling and trying to pick it all up together. But now you're dealing with some other issues. So
I have a Post-it note that I see in my purview all the time, and it just says "Start smart." And I think that it's something we always have to remind ourselves of because we get excited. I'm excited about the NFT space and my stick figures and how to, I'm trying to understand how the metaverse works and how it connects with 5G and all these things. But you really have to like soak it all in. You have to think it through and you have to take calculated action versus just, getting scrambled and trying to do a little bit of everything. So start smart. And from a resource, start with a few books and start with some articles, but think about the foundational steps, right? What is that foundation? And oftentimes when it comes to a personal brand, it's simply thinking through what you want to be known for. And if you haven't really sat there in a calm environment with your computer away, maybe, just zenning out, like, what do I want to be when I grow up, right? What do I want to be known for? Yeah. And when you really put the time and effort into thinking about that, what you want to be known for ends up becoming your North Star. It ends up becoming the guide for your content. It ends up being a barometer for what opportunities make sense for you and your brand. And so I think that if we don't know what we want to be known for, how can we expect to have others know us as a particular way? And so that's something that I think we are all challenged with. But when you think about it and decide and then run with that for a long period of time, people start to get to know you for what you want to be known for.
Mm-hmm. And that really resonates with me. I think what you said is super deep because it has big implications. You know, really, if you just start at the very beginning and think about it. So you said something that I want to, again, sort of pivot to. You said NFTs. And I want to just tell you a short story, if you'll indulge me for a few minutes.
I love stories, especially about NFTs.
Okay.
Let's do it. And by the way, pivot's cool. Like if you're not down with a pivot, then you're not ready for startup. So let's pivot.
All right. Pivoting. So we just got back from a vacation with my kids. And my husband and I, we invest. We have an E-Trade account, and we watch all the stocks, we read the news. And so on this trip, we were trying to convince our kids the importance of investing. And so we talked to them about the E-Trade 401k and all that stuff. And so my son, who's 22 years old, interrupts us and says, "No, Mom, it's all about the NFTs right now." And I'm like, "The what? What is that?" And of course, my husband, we're two lawyers, and we're like, "Well, we've never heard of NFTs. So if we haven't heard of NFTs, then it doesn't exist." So
exactly.
He starts giving us this explanation of what NFTs are and crypto and, all this stuff. And then my 10-year-old is like, "Yeah, Mom, I'm in Roblox and I buy NFTs all the time. So those $10 that you asked me for, it's for an NFT." So of course here, my husband who's 50, 58, and I'm, 47, like we're thinking we know everything. Our mind is just like,
yes.
Holy smoke. This is a world that I actually feel excited about, getting schooled from my 10-year-old and my 22-year-old about what is on the horizon. Tell me what you know about it, and sort of what your experience is with it.
I learned about it probably a year ago or so. And I was initially fascinated by the possible implications for art, for digital art, since I'm a stick figure artist. I've been drawing stick figures for years. And as I watched the space and I saw people like Gary Vee jump into it and get super bullish, and Mark Cuban get behind it, and it sort of opened up this realm of DeFi, which is decentralized banking, and applications around that, around cryptocurrency, which is essentially just a decentralized platform, decentralized monetary system on a blockchain, which a blockchain is just transparency when it comes to all transactions. And NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, just means that it's a one of a kind and you can't share it. At the end of the day, it's opening up the opportunity for digital ownership. And if I draw a stick figure right now and I post it, thousands of people will see it. You can take a screenshot, you can share it. There's really nothing that I can do about your ability to take it and share it. But NFTs are creating the ability to make little little deeds, like a deed to your house, where you say this property at this address is owned by me. You're able to mint digital assets. And a digital asset could be, if I took this Post-it note and I took a picture of it, it becomes digital. And so an NFT is a way to document ownership. It's essentially a receipt of ownership. Then the actual NFT is stored in a cloud or somewhere on your computer on the blockchain, or off of the blockchain, but it's documented. And so from an art standpoint, you now have digital artists or non-digital artists that can create digital art and create a certain number of them. And it can be sort of a one of a kind. And there's possibly a market for it. Where you have to understand too is that in 2017, there were some players in the game that created this art and just gave it away for free, but only a certain amount of it. And so as the popularity grew and all of these NFTs are on the blockchain and they're tied to cryptocurrency, is that there becomes perceived value because of the scarcity and supply and demand. So the same ape image or CryptoPunk image that was free in 2017 is now going for close to $500,000. And it's almost like a commoditization of all things digital. And if you think about it, we have stuff, right? We have books, we have things, we have trinkets, we have tchotchkes, all of this stuff. And most of what we have is a representation of who we are as a person, right? So I'm not going to buy some crazy outfit that I just don't feel comfortable in because it's not really me. So think of the clothes that you wear, think of the way you do your hair, the way that you present yourself. Humans are always presenting themselves with things that they want to have associated with them. Really, we're always branding ourselves based on, do we like how we look in this or do we like how we look in this? You know, people probably don't realize when they buy a Rolex and they invest the money, it's not necessarily because of the watch, it's because of the status that comes with the watch and the perception that comes with it. And so how I see all of this tying into branding at the end of the day is that just as you look in your closet, in your driveway, and at your house and at your lawn, these are all sort of tangents of you as a person and how you represent, how you show up in the world. And so the same thing is going to happen digitally. And it is happening. Your kids, if they're in these games, you can buy, a jersey or jerseys that you can wear in Fortnite, or you can have avatars that you can populate yourself into a video game, which is really a metaverse. And you can be like, you can look a certain way that represents who you are. So just as much as the consumer economy has been driven by people buying things that they want to represent themselves by, you're going to see this transition to people being able to buy and own digital assets that help represent who they are online. And you have Web 1.0 and then you have Web 2.0, and both of them are essentially two-dimensional. We're in this little box. But what's going to happen is that Web 3.0 will become metaverses. And why would we be here in this two-dimensional thing when I can just port over and have my hologram sitting there right across from you and it look just as real as I am? But what shirt am I going to be wearing in the digital world? And what is my environment going to look like there? So what excites me about the NFT space is that it's empowering a digital ownership of assets and commodities that can help you sort of, show who you are in this metaverse. Now that's a lot to kind of look at, but at the end of the day, you have a closet and a driveway and possessions. NFTs are going to be the digital equivalent to your being able to purchase and build your space in the metaverse. So I think it's really exciting to see things going in that direction. We're from a technology standpoint, early in usually has an advantage, and we're super early right now. The best ideas with NFTs are still being developed. We haven't even seen them yet. And so I think that there's an opportunity to learn about the space, because if you look at how much commerce has driven the economy outside of the internet, like just in the real world, look at that, but into this sort of new meta world. And if you haven't listened to it already, I just listened to this yesterday, but Mark Zuckerberg and Gary Vaynerchuk had a really cool 30-minute conversation where Gary picked Zuck's brain. And whether you like Facebook or like him or not, if you look at these two iconic figures sort of talking about where we've been and where we're going, I think that we're going places. So with that being said, stick figures is part of my brand. So I'm drawing stick figure NFTs, and I'm creating art that will have utility. And the final thing I'll say about NFTs is that one of the most powerful things is the content or the perks that can be unlocked. So I can have a stick figure GIF that has the utility for whoever buys it, that maybe you buy this stick figure GIF and it allows you to work with me for 30 days. And so I'm interested in NFTs as a way of, if somebody wants me to give a keynote speech, before we'd talk and then, we'd sign a contract and then they'd send me the money and there'd be wire fees and it'd take all this time. I'm working to a spot where I can make a digital representation of the essence of the talk, right? Stick figures or an artistic creation of like, oh, here's a digital representation of what this keynote is. And if you're interested in that keynote, you purchase that NFT, and as the owner of it, it gives you the opportunity or unlocks the ability for me to come and deliver that talk. Now it has a smart contract associated with it. So all the terms and conditions are immediately there. And after the talk is done, this company now has an asset, a digital asset that they own that's representative of it. So there are people that are like Mark Cuban is thinking about tickets to basketball games being an NFT, tickets to concerts as an NFT. Just like you'd show your QR code, do you have an NFT for this? There's 10,000 of them made. Yes, boop, I have one. And if you've ever gone to a concert and you keep your lanyard, you're like, remember that was that Weenie Rose, that was great, 2019 or whatever, right? We have this affinity towards things and we collect things. So watch out for your favorite concert. The ticket will be an NFT. The utility will be your entrance to that event. And then after the fact, you have a keepsake that's digital that you own. And let's say that something really crazy happens at that concert and you were one of the people there. Maybe that NFT value becomes more valuable because somebody who wasn't there wants a piece of it. So there's a primary, a secondary market, and it's all tied to crypto. So if crypto goes up, the value of everything goes up. If the value goes down, it goes down. So I know it may sound like a lot, and it is, but it's opening up the world to digital ownership. And when you go into the metaverse, you'll start to see that people are selling property in these video game type of worlds, and you can buy property with an NFT, and you can do this. So it's going to be the digital ownership bridge between the world as we know it, and sort of the Web 3.0 as we go. And as part of my brand, I'm always liking to be, front of the line with adopting technology. So I'm going to stumble through it and help educate people along the way, because only about, 18 or 20% of people have ever experienced crypto in a way, and there's still like 80% of the market that's just on the shoreline watching all the ships trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, by the way, my daughter created a mansion in her Roblox world that's on sale for 1.2 million. If you're interested, I can connect you to her. No, but to add to what you're saying, I from my perspective, it's an opportunity because, what happens as a society is we sort of go through these phases, if you will, in that the older generation, the conversation I was having with my son and my 10-year-old daughter, which was, no, not happening. E-Trade is the way. It's tried and true. It's regulated. And I said that to him. I said, E-Trade is regulated. I just had this whole spiel. But I think that's really how society progresses, is that just when we think the world is coming to an end and, that something's going to die and we're going to go with it, in comes this younger generation with these ideas that really change the game. And for the startup community, it is a big opportunity for us to, not like you said, to sort of get on that bandwagon in the early phases and really take the lead in driving this whole new world of consumerism, or selling what we have, the things that, your stick figures, you put it on a piece of paper and 10 years from now, it's gone, but not in this world, not in the metaverse world. It will live on for a really long time.
Yeah, your great grandkids likely can have conversations with your avatar in the metaverse, hearing a story about when you first learned about NFTs. Like it is very meta when you think about it. And the final thing I'll say about this is all of innovation is tied to our access to technology. And so 1G got us to be able to have analog phone calls. 2G got us to have the phone calls and a data so we could start to text. 3G was the bridge to 4G, which gave us apps like Uber and Lyft and Instacart and all this. And now 5G, the 5th generation, is going to have the potential for lower latency than we've ever seen before, which enables AR, VR, these metaverses, Internet of Things, these crazy huge smart factories with high definition drones that are monitoring crops and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, as the technology lets us get faster and deal with more data, okay, it's amazing, but it's also creating new problems. And so there's so much opportunity. Now it's like we're able to implement and run after ideas and use cases that we could never handle before. So it's a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur. It's also a really stressful and scary time. That's the balance that comes with it.
Yeah. And just to sort of bring it back, to pivot again, to bring it back to, our conversation, I think in all of this, it will be a lot easier to lose ourselves and to lose who we are, and staying authentic and really, doing what you said, is remembering what your core messaging is and who you want to be, is going to be even more important. And doing the yoga, and doing all those things that help you stay authentic and true to who you are, I think is a message that we'll need more than ever, as we embark in this new generation of what life is going to look like.
Yeah, I tell people that successful individuals, successful entrepreneurs, successful artists, successful painters, successful, whatever you want to say, successful people are not successful because they're doing things that everyone else cannot do. Successful people are doing what everyone can do, but not everyone does. And so if you are a startup, or you are an entrepreneur, or you are growing as an entrepreneur, or you're growing as a startup, don't forget the value of the little small things that you can do every day. And that could be reading one article about 5G or one article about NFTs every day. And it's an act of Congress to fit that 15 minutes in your schedule. But then you flash forward, I don't know, a month or 2 months, and now you've got 30, 60 articles in you that now helps you connect more dots. The same thing for drinking water and working out and spending time with your loved ones and going unplugging. So I have a feeling that so many people look at technology as a way to find hacks and apps. But at the end of the day, what I personally can say is that what has moved my business forward is the daily work that I put in, the grind that happens, putting my head down. I've got a little timer, a little Pompereto timer. So I'm either in 15, 25, 30, 45 minute sprints, but don't try to look for an easy way, because you'll set yourself up for failure. Having a startup, being an entrepreneur, is the hardest thing you'll ever do. But when you work at it and you actually find the fun in it and you enjoy the journey, that's when you can truly be yourself, do the things that you enjoy, put in the work, stay healthy, and make a difference, solve a problem. At the end of the day, I get most excited about the problems that people are solving, and I get most excited about the problems that I want to solve. And I think that's in essence what a startup is. They're starting something to solve a problem.
I love that message. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I think it's the perfect message to end with. Thank you so much, Ryan, for all these nuggets of experience and wisdom that you shared. I know that it'll be valuable. And, even if one person hears something that sparks them to come back to who they are, I think, at least for me, personal goal achieved. So thank you.
Real quick, that's what my mom has told me that since the beginning of time, right? You are either, there's moments in our life as we're growing up where we want more people. You're like, oh, nobody showed up, or, oh, one person showed up, or like, oh, this didn't. And she'd say, Ryan, it just takes one person. If you can make an impact to one person, then it can matter. It will make a difference. So I love that as a sentiment. And if somebody's hearing this and you are impacted, or you're interested or excited, think of this as a single dot. Right now, this is a dot, and it takes at least 2 dots to make a line. So if you're inspired by this dot, if you don't do anything about it, it remains a dot. But if you want to go buy my book, Ditch the Act, that's another dot. If you want to reach out to me and find me on Twitter, it's another dot. If you want to listen to the next podcast in the series, that's another dot. So in order to keep traction and make things move, you've got to connect the dots. And I'm sorry, but you are responsible for the next dot. I don't know who you are, so I can't connect that next dot. But may this be the first of many dots. And if you want to find out ways to connect the dots, you can easily find me at ryan.online. If you remember my name, Ryan Lyon, the guy with the beard, the ginger, Ryan, if you find me online, it's just ryan.online. So I look forward to the next dot with you, with your listeners, and with the metaverse.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And until next time, because there will be a next time, I'm confident.
Absolutely. There are dots in our future. We just got to figure that out and connect them.
Right. Okay, well, have a good one, and we will connect again soon with the
Sounds good. I'm
jobs.
gonna go do some yoga right now.
All right, awesome. Not me, but I will at some point.